Namaskara and welcome to BIC Talks, a podcast brought to you by Bangalore International Centre, where we present conversations that move, inform, and encourage discourse.
So this was a very deep connection, and I still remember somewhere in the early months, at least, it could be a figment of imagination or whatever. Her fragrance would come through the room, or suddenly I would find a strand of hair or something of hers, and that gave me some confidence that okay, someone is here listening to my balderdash. So that way, when you've embalmed something, I almost felt like that film, right, Psycho, where he mummifies his mother and keeps her as she left him. Everyone I know has been telling me, please, for her sake, she had an OCD for cleanliness, so she would certainly not appreciate that you have left her room in this manner. So please take that off, change the bedspread, change that water bottle, use that water bottle. But I don't know, to just gather that courage has been so tough, as has been writing about it, talking about it worse. Talking about Tipu Sultan or Gauhar Jan or anything is so much more simpler because there's no emotional connect there with the person.
Every joke, facial expression, song and stick of furniture we inherit from those we lived with and loved tells its own story of continuity, of pasts and the present. Writers A.T. Boyle and Shinie Antony, who put together the collection exObjects, the art of holding on, letting go, delve into the micro-histories and macro-memories of things left behind. The 11 authors have re-envisaged people, places and things lost, but certainly not forgotten. In this episode, Vikram Sampath, whose late beloved mother infused him with her love for classical music, and Shantanu Ray Chaudhuri, the editor of this volume, together with Boyle and Antony, discuss the hum and the heart of belongings. This episode was adapted from an event that took place at the Bangalore International Centre in December of 2024.
To start off, maybe you could just read that little bit which sort of introduces the book in your essay about your father and what it meant.
Thank you, Shantanu. For his last birthday, I had given my dad what he called a fancy watch. I don't think he ever wore it. When the hospital returned his things, they also returned his watch. Through the fog of grief, I did notice it was the old steel watch, not the one I had given him. For a long time, we held on to both watches, the new and the old. Eventually, his best friend took one and my younger daughter took the other. She got a pretty box and put the old steel watch carefully into it, and the box was on a desk in her room in another city. Once, when I snapped that I'd half a mind to go to a psychic medium to contact Dad, the same daughter said, better not. Our Papa so firmly believed there's no life after death that if you do manage to track him down in the afterworld, he'd be very embarrassed he got it wrong.
Alison, just to get you on the conversation there, it all originated with your site on artificial cell and exObjects. So just a quick introduction to how the book, the idea came about, and your collaboration on Shinie, and then we go into the specifics of the essays.
Thank you. Yeah, my parents died in very difficult circumstances during the COVID years, and I'm sure all of you in some way will have appreciated the difficulties of that time, whether it was lockdown, whether you weren't separated from people who you loved. You couldn't get there. And they were lovely people. They were married for nearly 70 years. So, they'd had a good life. But the ending was very difficult. We were away from them. And as soon as I had the call from the hospital that my mum had died alone, I opened my iPad and I started writing. And there was a fog in my brain, but the action of writing enabled me to have a sort of form and a feeling of control over whatever it was going on in my head. And the things I wrote they're not the things in the book, but they were important beginnings. And I think it's important for us all to know that we can write what we like, we can leave out what we like, we can show to people something, we can keep it hidden if we want to. But either it's writing or creating or something, it's enabling our emotions to connect in a way to those people. And so exObjects came out, the object can be an object, like you say, in a house. It can be an object that somebody handed down to us that we found. But it can also be something that feels quite intangible, something perhaps we feel is a loss, that we hoped that we might have achieved, but we haven't yet. But by helping, it helps us, I think, to articulate, how we might go about it, a little bit of a structure. And it was brilliant that Shinie and I met in Bengaluru 8 years ago. We spoke very little, but there was something really kind of intriguing about Shinie. And she agrees, of course. And so we just developed it. Actually, over time, we developed this friendship. And we were sharing a loss, Shinie's dad, my parents. But we found these connections through so many things, the cultural connections, humor through loss. And we had Zoom calls and emails. And here we are, with Shantanu's help. And it was a real privilege to work with the authors who contributed quite risk-taking personal stories. Obviously, they chose to leave out and to include what they wanted to for the public. But for many of them, it was the first time, I think for Vikram as well, that we shared things that, we weren't splurging out to everybody. None of the authors were always talking about these things. We shared them in a way that we hope has universal, in some ways, universal connection with your stories. And we want, through the book, to actually encourage the readers to see themselves in the stories and to perhaps move it on themselves and find their own stories.
Vikram, you begin your essay with this small note where you say, to look your demons in the eye and bare your heart for the world to read is not a particularly comfortable experience. I didn't expect it to be, hence I kept postponing it, like an errant schoolboy who shies away from difficult homework. And right through reading your essay, that difficulty comes alive every page, every paragraph is sort of, we talk a lot about catharsis and closure. You've actually used whatever that might mean within brackets. And your posts, I've been following your posts on the book. Does this essay provide any sort of closure or catharsis? What has this meant for you?
Today is a difficult evening, to be honest. It is so much easier for me as a historian to talk about people who are dead and gone, who have no connection with me. But as everyone's mentioned, bearing a bit of yourself, your soul, your heart for the world, not with the fear that you're going to be judged, but the very fact that you're even talking about it in public is something that, it was very, very difficult for me to do personally. And that's why when Shinie told me about this project, for the longest time, I kept warding her off, saying, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I have it in me to write this. I'm better off. It's very difficult for me to not only write personal stuff in public and also write about emotions. So that's why I choose the comfort of nonfiction, which gives me a lot of evasion from the things that I avoid. But then she's very persistent and she somehow has her way all the time. In a very passive-aggressive manner, she gets all her work done. And that's how I think even the various festivals that she now queens over. So she's managed to keep that going for so long because the lady is a woman with a spine. So she managed this essay from me. And this is about the passing away of my mother. And my mother was the central piece of my life, who kept very, very poor health for almost 19, 20 years. So right from my late teens till the end, about 20 years of caregiving. And I think caregiving does a lot to you. It takes a lot out of you. And then your life decisions, your everything in your existence revolves around a certain person, their comfort. Most often your own decisions or your privileges start getting almost subservient to the other person's comfort. And suddenly, boom, the person is gone. And then you don't know what is the purpose of your life later. What is it that you are now to do? So when Shinie also told me about this objects, we need an object which the departed has left behind. My mother was not a person who was too besotted with anything material. So she didn't care too much about any of her numerous saris or her jewelry, nothing. There wasn't. But I came up with my essay is titled Ma's Room. I've actually embalmed her room. Indira spoke about letting go and dismantling. I know I have to do that at some point. To January 18th, 2025, it will be 7 long years of her departure. But trust me, even the bed sheet on her bed is the same. That's why there's also a photograph of that. The pillow, the water in that bottle, it must have gone putrid now, but still it is still there. There's a box of her medicines which still rests by the bedside. And I don't know, for a long time, that room was my safe space to probably go and talk to somebody there, to talk to her. And I cry, all of it, which you can't do in public or even with an otherwise emotionally unavailable father. So this was a very deep connection. And I still remember somewhere in the early months, at least, it could be a figment of imagination or whatever, her fragrance would come through the room, or suddenly I would find a strand of hair or something of hers. And that gave me some confidence that, okay, someone is here listening to my balderdash. So that way, when you've embalmed something, I almost felt like that film, right, Psycho, where he mummifies his mother and keeps her as she left him. Everyone I know has been telling me, please, for her sake, she had an OCD for cleanliness, so she would certainly not appreciate that you have left her room in this manner. So please take that off, chain the bedspread, chain that water bottle, use that water bottle. But I don't know, to just gather that courage has been so tough, as has been writing about it, talking about it worse. Talking about Tipu Sultan or Gauhar Jan or anything is so much more simpler because there's no emotional connect there with the person. So to your question, Shantanu, I don't know if that closure can ever happen, especially if the person who's left you is so, as I said, so intrinsically deeply connected. Of course, the wound heals. They say time heals everything. You tend to that famous word of move on in life. But I think with every death of a person who's so close to us, a part of us dies. Then, the whole brunt of the memories that you have with that person, it's left on only your shoulder to bear. Very personal things with the departed and you, there's so many jokes you would have cracked, so many stories you would have remembered. And suddenly, to even recollect that, whom do I share that with now? There's nobody whom you can talk about these with. So I think this has been certainly a cathartic experience. Writing it and then reading that later, was traumatic, really, really traumatic. And so somewhere in the piece, I also recall that my mother, in her innocence or whatever, she would say, what is this? Why are you writing about all these long dead people who are gone? Write about me. I have so much to share about so many things about my life, its struggles and all that. And I would laugh at her and say, who's going to read that book? Even your husband is not going to. And so there was a certain kind of, I think, hurt and pain in her eyes, but she would quickly snap from that and say, okay, for this, you don't even have to go to an archive. You just have to come and talk to me. I'll tell you everything very generously. And I just kept postponing it. I don't know, Shantanu, this project, and thanks to Alison, Shinie, and you, somewhere that desire has rekindled in my mind to probably write a memoir or a biography, a short one of hers. Very, very difficult what all to come out in the public. There are a lot of those people who are still alive about whom not many charitable things might be said in the book. But maybe, biographies need not be only about the rich and famous and well-known people. A normal middle-class woman and her travails of life and what it did to her and what it did to the people who she left behind. I think those become important elements. So hopefully that book also will come somewhere and then she'll say, I told you so.
I wanted to say that it was a pleasure meeting your mum through your story. And also I persuaded Shinie to talk about her mum in the story, which wasn't in there originally, because we meet the people that are loved through these stories. And I feel that it was very palpable, the way that you described her and her conversations. And I think you say in your story, she's the one telling you to throw that putrid water away from the bottle. So you hear them through the other people who knew them. So you've given us something. And I think you've given your mum something too, through the story, genuinely.
Shinie, taking off from what Vikram says, and I'll come back to Vikram to ask him about his response to this. Was there something while writing this piece on your father? Was there something that came like a surprise that, okay, this is something I didn't know. This is something I have learned or realized only now. And I'm sure Vikram will have a longer take on that. But some things that you had to say, unlearn, I don't know a better word. Well, unlearn about your dad and get to see him in a new perspective while writing this.
Yeah, as I age, I think I'm getting closer to his age, that he passed away. So I do kind of think, okay, what my dad went through. But I think, first of all, when it happened, I went totally numb. and I did not react. I thought people were watching me for a reaction, and I was like trying to, I just didn't have a reaction. But I do remember that till today I have not forgiven him for doing what he did. I feel very betrayed because I just did not expect him to go at the time he went. It was all very sudden because he was talking to me on the phone, and there was a neighbor auntie who was in the ICU, and the entire conversation was about it's better she goes and very soon she'll be gone. And my dad said, you don't come, she's been ailing for so long. And the next day I get a phone call that he's unwell and he's in the hospital. And for 10 days he was in the hospital. And somewhere I feel he stayed on because we wouldn't let him go either. And there's this whole guilt you feel because you gave the person permission to go, and you're like, am I that powerful? Did I do that? Could I have actually, But yes, I feel all of us deal with loss, even with people who are not yet officially gone. They're still around. They've ghosted you. You could have a child who has thrown up walls around themselves, or you could have a spouse, like you said, emotionally detached. Or, in India, it's a very, very respectable thing for a husband to do, to stay emotionally detached, So I feel all of us deal with that, communicating with someone who's no longer there. That person really doesn't have to be gone for that.
Your father actually comes across as this very sort of person full of life. As you say, he would just be honest with everything. I love this passage where you talk about somebody else being put on a pacemaker and being very anxious about it. And Shinie's father actually barges into the hospital room. He's got a pacemaker on and he says, a pacemaker is a thing of beauty.
Thing of joy.
Yeah, thing of joy.
The funny part about that was my dad had gone for a routine checkup, and the doctor said, I don't have many patients like you. Usually I tell them pacemaker, stent, etc., and they kind of have a nervous breakdown right before my eyes. Look at this gentleman, he's the same age as you, and now we are rushing him to another hospital for that. And my dad followed the ambulance, and he doesn't know the man. And he goes like so far, and how I knew this story is not because my dad told me, but on his 7th day ceremony, there was a gentleman looking a little lost. And I did not know who he was. And I was introducing myself to many people because I didn't know some of them. So I went to him and he said, I'm actually not related to you and I really don't know you all. But I came because your dad came to my hospital, which was 2 hours away. He followed my ambulance and he came to just tell me that there's nothing to worry.
Alison, for you, as you say, you lost your parents over a period of 7 months, one after the other. What is it that writing this sort of brought back? Anything that you thought, okay, I didn't know this, but now that I think and I'm putting this down, this is a facet that...
Yeah, what it taught me was a lot about my mom, because I felt that because of the social mores, the time that she was living as a young woman was very different from me. And there was a parent-child thing. She was a very strong woman, but very modest. And what I forced myself to do in the book was to write about her, because my dad was an entertainer. He just sang everywhere. He wanted to be a full-time actor, but he was not able to do that because we were fairly poor. He wanted to sing and act, and he wanted to just show off. And my mum, appeared to be quite the opposite of that. But she was quite inscrutable. So what the book did for me was made me ignore my dad, because the whole of my stories could have just been about my dad very easily. He was at the curtains, saying, oi, you've not written about me yet. And he does appear in one of the stories. So he had to appear. But I wrote about my mom because I wanted to find out about her. And I found that I could be quite brave in filling the gaps. And I was drawing on things I did know about her, but I was trying to also accept that I couldn't know everything about her. I was really reminded, actually, this wonderful, Alliance University in Bangalore. We did workshops. Shinie very kindly set up workshop for us, and I think Renaissance has done them. And one of the young women wrote, "Of course I am my mother's daughter." And it made me think about, sometimes we are given objects or we're given things in life that we have to accept, we feel we do. And I would just say my answer to you is that my initial reaction would be, I am not my mother's daughter. I was a kind of a rebel and I went away and I did this and that and I didn't want to be limited and by the life that she had. But I would say what I have learnt, or unlearnt, if you call it, is that, I am my mother's daughter in some other ways that I didn't realise, because I've looked as carefully as I could at the gaps and tried to make these connections. And I tried to, as we all have, I think, brought the humour out. It's not a sort of grunge misery memoir. It's really quite happy and celebratory. And, we hope that you will laugh at parts that you read. So I would say that is something that I've learned, that by forcing myself to look, I feel really positive about some of the things that I didn't understand. I knew she was a wonderful woman, but I didn't know why she was.
You mentioned about your father being somebody who sang and was quite the sort of performer and all of that. So is there a song that you'd like me to play here?
This is a song, not necessarily play all of it, me singing in French. We had a family band. We performed at home together. We performed outside. And this is something that I carried on when I moved away. I was in various bands. So this is called Sous le ciel de Paris.
Since we're on music, we can't let go of you and your involvement with music, and more so because you have a large section here where you talk about Ma as a lover of music, and somehow that kind of transferred, that love, that sort of passion for music transferred itself, led to you to learn music and also write your first book was. So could you just, on Gohar Chance, if you could just give that aspect of your mother and then maybe just sing something for us?
I was quite surprised by what you said, that you felt your father betrayed you. So I think that's not something that you should think, Shinie, because I wish they had an opportunity to do things otherwise. And that struck something within me that, here was this lady who, as I said, had 20 years of, she was a living museum of every melody that was there. But the positive, spirit and the never say die attitude, almost all my book launches and the festivals and all that, she would be a regular feature. And a lot of people would come to her and ask her, you don't look like Vikram's mother, you look like his elder sister. What is the secret of your youth? And she would sheepishly, grin and say, yeah, nothing much and so on. But someday I think a particular person was kept pestering her and asking her, tell me more, what do you do? So I think she just got so irritated that day. And she said, you really want to know? Malignant lung cancer, to heart attacks, to strokes, diabetes, high blood pressure, glaucoma, neuropathy. This is the secret of my youth. Would you want any of it? Of course, I lost a permanent attendee to my book events thereafter. So yeah, she sometimes gave it back also in that way. But for a person who, we were talking of departure, a person whose constant fear was, how am I going to go with all these ailments? And a lot of time, the morbid conversations would be, if it comes to the state of, a ventilator and nasal feeding and all of that, please let me go. Don't keep me alive. I don't want to be a vegetable. And I said, euthanasia is not legal here. So how do I do that, actually, if you think about it? So it was a very difficult conversation. But for someone like that, I mean, on the 18th of January, the morning, it started as just another morning. And usually I used to take her to the hospital for all her checkups. But that day I had some talk in Srishti School of Design. And so my father said he'll take her for a little eye checkup or something. And it was a morning as any other. She had cooked for the day and she's like, are you going to come home for dinner or it's going to be there? Have you kept the key? All of this. And I said, please leave. The appointment is, time is nearing. And in the car also, husband and wife always kept quarreling and arguing and all of that. He said, I don't want to talk to you anymore. And I'm just going to be resting. When the hospital comes, just wake me up. And the hospital was about 10 minutes away. And then he just shook her and there she went, plonk. And that was the end. And I kept asking my driver, I came in the same car, sitting in that same place. Where did this little soul vanish from here, right? So on the other side, if there is another side, and they say we meet people again, if there is another side, that's the only thing I would like to tell that, hey, woman, I think the only thing you were worried about was how you're going to go and look at your luck, the manner in which. And the first thing when I rushed to the hospital, cancelling the talk and coming there, everyone was very sad. And my first involuntary reaction then was, I'm so happy for her. I think that if you really love someone, letting them go, but holding on to those memories and the pain also. What is wrong with holding pain? Pain is probably the biggest ingredient for all art. So, and art, when we speak of art, music, particularly classical music, my mother was pretty talented in music. She learned the veena and so on as a child, but her maternal home was not one of abundance and so on. So she just couldn't manage to get a proper training beyond a point. I think a lot of those dreams and aspirations were something she tried to find a culmination in me. And so at the age of 5, I was marshaled off to a music class in the Vijaya College of Music. And it was so serendipitous and sad that just 2 days back, my music teacher from that same school, Vidwan D.V. Nagaraj, he passed away. And I said, oh my God, 2 days later, I'm going to talk about this. And music teacher with whom so many memories of every song, every rag was associated, he's also gone. Initially, it was very difficult to go to those classes because it ate into valuable, play time. But I think music is such an addiction that once you are afflicted by it, you can't let go. And so the madness continued thereafter for 20, 25 years of training under several people whom I've done gross injustice to by never pursuing the art formally. No loss to music anyway. But in all of that, she was the silent, the inspiring force. The Fort High School Ram Navami concerts, which I'm sure all of you know about, for 45 days and so on. There's a series, all the who's who of Indian music are there. And as a child, she would tell me that her father, because they couldn't afford tickets, they would just stand outside and he would put her on his shoulder, and from outside, they would listen to M.S. Subbulakshmi and Bade Ghulam Ali Khan and all the greats who came there and sang. And she used to say, whenever M.S. Subbulakshmi sang there, it always used to rain. I don't know what the connection was. April, mango showers and Subbulakshmi. So I think after that, she started we obviously could afford season passes to go and sit there. And all through, she would keep asking, can you guess the rag? Can you, and as I kept the talam, as the performance went, I knew there was an eye which was watching to see, am I keeping it correctly? And much later in life, I had the very, very good fortune of training under two very eminent artists, Srimati Bombay Jayashree and later Dr. Jayanti Kumaresh here. And even for that, every vacation of going to Chennai, almost like a Gurukul Vas there at Jayashree Akka's house. And my mother also would come along. And so it was a family project, or her project, so to say. And honestly, in the 7 years that have passed, my Tanpura is actually rusted. I've not even strummed it even once. It's only on Vijay Dashmi that I bring it out, dust it, and do that ritual puja. So just when Shinie warned me that there might be a little bit of singing, it was so tough to do that also, to get back to a very, very, voice that was totally out of service, to even bring it to probably any kind of action, which I'll try to postpone as much as possible. If there's no time, I'll say thank you very much.
No, we'll have time. I'll cut out all the questions and we'll have time for that. Shinie, in contrast to his very sort of musical thing, the couple of mentions of music you have is about off-key singing.
Oh, yes, my dad. When we used to go for parties, and they would say, "Acha, abhi gana gaate hain," and all that. And the real singers would sit shyly because they need to be coaxed to sing, or they'll say, "Garam pani nahi piya hai," or whatever they would say. My dad would be eagerly looking up, like, who's going to ask me to sing? And my brother and I would be deeply embarrassed, and we would be like, not make eye contact, because we we really had to, suffer that singing, even at home. But his tunelessness can only be compared in weight to his overconfidence about his singing. And he would give these, when I say betrayed, I want to, I feel like, he had so many stories about where he came from. His uncles were the same age as him. So he used to go, I didn't ask him because I thought there was time, and he would always start some story and I would be like, see, not right now. And so I thought there was time. And I feel that if he knew he didn't have the time, he should have sat me down, told me those stories and not made me guess them. So my dad would do that. He would sing. And then he would not just sing, he would he would give a little anecdote about, and the thing is, I was born and brought up in Delhi and my first language or mother tongue is kind of Hindi. And my dad, for no reason, because we are Malayalis and we were living in Delhi, his first love in languages was Tamil. And I don't know if he was pronouncing those words correctly, but he would copiously sing Tamil songs, And the two things that had interested him were lullabies and funeral songs. And the funeral songs were mostly Christian hymns. So when it came to lullabies, there is one Shivaji Ganeshan song. I don't know the film's name. I'm going to sing that. Sadly for everyone here. The song went, the song goes, Malandu malarada paadi malar pole, vidiyum vijivanname. But he would always look at me when he came to this line, which is, Kannil mani pole, maniyil nizhal pole. So, he's trying to tell me that I am the shadow in his eyeball. And I knew he was going to look at me if he sang this in public, so I would studiously not look at him at all. And the funeral song that he really liked was composed by a German priest who came to Kerala and wrote a lot of Malayalam songs. He's written in other languages too. In 1897, before I think even the church had kind of grouped itself, So that song is... രാത്രിയിൽ ഞാൻ ദൈവത്തിൻ്റെ കൈകളിൽ ഉറങ്ങുന്നു അപ്പോഴും എൻ രഥത്തിൻ്റെ ചക്രം മുമ്പോട്ടോടുന്നു സമയാമാം രഥത്തിൽ ഞാൻ സ്വർഗയാത്ര ചെയ്യുന്നു.
It's like...
So basically it means I'm traveling in the chariot of time, and at night I sleep in the arms of God, and when I wake up I'm suddenly in his land. And this song means a lot to me now because I hope he's in really a divine place.
In fact, even in the ICU, you kind of mentioned you and your brother Googling these songs for their words and singing.
And the other comatose patients really had a tough time.
For all of you, Alison, maybe start off. Does writing about the one no longer with us, like your parents, Vikram's mother, Shinie's father, does writing about the one no longer with us bring back fond memories, or is it more about reliving the trauma? Which one of it I know there are passages here which are really fun to read. There's a lot of laughter in those passages. Which part of it weighs more, the fond memories part of it, or the trauma in recalling that those are gone?
We all grieve, and we grieve to different lengths. We come out of it at some stage. We don't leave them behind, but definitely the joys. And one of my pieces actually is called Sound Waves, and I was going to mention that it's not just singing in the book that we have. We have sounds. We have the sounds of people's voices. We have a sound of Shinie's mum and the way she has a little laugh when she hears her on the phone, the same as my mum used to do that. And there's a story here that I wrote about my mum leaving messages on an answer phone. And we wouldn't necessarily answer the answer phone. We knew she was ringing, but it just wasn't quite the right time to speak, or we hadn't got the information ready for the time she was going to be speaking to us. But what I think was good about writing this was that she was able to, we have a recording of her voice, and she was able to speak in an sort of fettered way directly to us. So I've got that answer phone. I played her message on the piano, and I was quite surprised at the intonation. You know, she would say, "Hello, Alison, it's only me," you know, and there's a tune. And we sometimes hear it in an echo in a room, but there's a permanence to that. Definitely very positive. The things that came to me through looking closely. So David's the youngest writer in the book, and first time published next to us amazing writers who are very experienced, of course. And so David lives in Kerala, and he wrote about key that he has to a home that has been disassembled, a teak house that was, you know, reconstructed in a tourist place. But, you know, very movingly has the key, and talks about some of the sounds of the beautiful rubber plantations and places in Kerala. And others do talk about the sounds that connect us to those memories, you know, almost like a snap. We'll suddenly be taken there. Includes music, but can be other kinds of sounds. So definitely a healing process for me.
Shinie, for you?
I think when my dad was around, I always wanted to not be like him. You know, people would say, "Oh, you're like ditto like him," or "You laugh like him." And I would be like, inside, I would just smile politely, but inside I was like, "No, of course not," you know. Or I've got my broad shoulders from him, and all of that used to ail me a lot, you know. But after he's gone, I remember it was just like maybe not even fortnight after his going, the electrician had come home and he was leaving. I was alone at home. When he was leaving, he had reached the gate and I said, "Good night." And he turned around and said, "You know, that was spooky because your dad used to do the same." And then it felt like a connection. So now when people say I laugh like him or I look like him, and as I age, I resemble him more, I'm very, very, that is also part of the healing process, that, you know, what he went through, I'm going through. And at my age, what did he do? I like to kind of trace what was, my dad dealing with when he was 59. I'm very, very, I try and remember that. He came and I had a job, and then, you know, what he advised me. All of those words now come back to me without my attitude problem obscuring it from...
Vikram?
Yeah, that's so true. In fact, you tell me so many times that suddenly there's a stark resemblance to your mother.
He looks ditto like his mom.
Which was not the case then. I don't know, something does happen. I think once they leave, they leave a little imprint. No, Shantanu, I think as reluctant as I was to get this work going, thank you, and thank you, Alison, for giving us this space to even talk, think. I think when you articulate and start putting it down, processing emotions in the process of writing it, I think a lot of suppressed emotions which we don't bring out with the fear that it's actually fear of looking our own demons in the eyes. But I think this gave an opportunity to just see it, and then you realize what that person means for you in a tangible sense. We all love our loved ones, but what aspects of them do we love? What aspects of their life, their struggles actually made us what we are? How do they inspire us? What are the things about them we don't like? I think this gave an opportunity to just think about that entire kaleidoscope about the person. So I think to that extent, it was deeply, deeply, a healing experience, which many sessions with Anna Chandy and Sham Bhatt therapy sessions could not do. I think you managed it very easily.
Stardust is a love song about a love song. And the last line of it is the memory of love's refrain. And the memory is sparked by the sound of the nightingale that the singer hears in the night sky when they've lost their love. So I'll just sing you just a little bit at the end. Beside a garden wall, when stars are bright, you are in my arms. The melody haunts my memory, and I am once again with you when our love was true. And each dream an inspiration. But that was long ago, and now my consolation is in the stardust of a song.
Lovely. As I said, it's a rusted voice of 7 years. Tried to polish it in overnight, which doesn't happen. So, Ma, sorry if I mess up. This was a very interesting song, which was her favorite among several others. There were so many farmaishes. My music practice would turn into a mini concert, because I'd say, please don't go out, don't sit with me, because while you're practicing, they say you should never see a bawarchi cooking. Similarly, you should never see a musician practicing, because no note is fine, everything is all over the place. And she would express her dissatisfaction and so on. I said, I'm not performing, I'm practicing. Can you just go out? I'll come and sing for you later. There's no point you sitting and peering down, like this. And most often, if I sang well, suddenly, while singing, I never open my eyes. I think the stage fear that I have since childhood till today ensures, even during my performances, which I used to give then, I have to always keep my eyes closed. And suddenly I open and I see there are tears streaming down her eyes. And I said, was it so bad? No, it was actually very good. So this song was something my guru, Srimati Bombay Jayashree, had taught me long back. And it later became popular because she sang it, I think, in that Coke studio with fabulous Ustad Rashid Khan Sahab. And it is from a verse from the Mahabharata, the Bhishma Parva, where just before the terrible war breaks out, Lord Krishna asks Arjun to worship goddess Durga. And we're talking about loss, and I think we need the Divine Mother's grace to get that strength to fight this battle against loss. So I will try my best. Katyayani Mahabhage, Katyayani Mahabhage, Karali Vijaye Jaye Jaye Vijaye Jaye, Katyayani Mahabhage, Karali Vijaye Jaye. Shikhi pichha dhwaja dhare, Shikhi pichha dhwaja dhare, Nana bharana bhushite, Katyayani Mahabhage, Karali Vijaye Jaye. Shikhi pichha dhwaja dhare, Nana bharana bhushite, Katyayani Mahabhage, Karali Vijaye Jaye. Attashula praharane, Attashula praharane, Khadga khetak dharini, Attashula praharane, Khadga khetak dharini, Gopendrasya Jeshthe, Gopendrasya Jeshthe, Nanda Gopa Kulodbhave, Katyayani Mahabhage, Karali Vijaye Jaye. Mahishasrik priye nityam, Mahishasrik priye nityam, Kaushiki pithavasini, महिषासृक्प्रिये नित्यं कौशिकी पीठवासिनी अट्टहासे कोकमुखे अट्टहासे कोकमुखे नमस्ते स्तूरणप्रिये कात्यायनी महाभागे कराळी विजये जये शिखिपीच्छध्वजधरे नानाभरणभूषिते कात्यायनी महाभागे कराळी विजये जये जये विजये
You have been listening to BIC Talks by Bangalore International Center. If you like what you heard, do follow us on social media. Keep up with our programming by signing up for our mailer on the website or leave us a review or rating on Apple Podcasts or iTunes. The crew that makes these podcasts possible is Gaurav Krishna and Ishan Gupta on sound supervision and production, with support from S. Sarunaraj and Raghu Tenkaila. Artwork is designed by Chandni Venkataraman of Crisscross Design Studio. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel on your favorite podcast platform. It can also be accessed on our website, bangaloreinternationalcenter.org. This is Lekha Naidu signing off on behalf of everyone at BIC.